Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think to use your expression, Ahmed, I think the crooks always stay ahead of the game, and I think it's one of the sort of features of, I suppose, human nature that whatever regulatory system you put in place, those people who are absolutely dedicated to getting round whatever you put in place will do so. What I would say, I think, is that just in the same way as banks always find fantastic ways of losing money, market abuse will continue. I have no doubt that also the authorities will carry on catching people. And I think that's true in the United States, and I think it's also true in the UK, where the FSA in particular has been much stricter. I think one of the things we haven't talked about today is if I may prolong this aspect, are the revisions to the market abuse insider trading directive, again following the pattern that we've seen, both a regulation to replace the existing directive and an amending directive. But I think one of the big gaps here, whilst we've talked a lot about the US and the UK, is that really, frankly, the lack of enforcement in the rest of Europe. Whenever do you hear of an insider trading case in the rest of Europe? And some of the things that the Commission have put in the amending directive and regulation on insider trading, like sort of criminal sanctions, etc., will certainly help, perhaps, in this respect.
Ahmed?
Yes, I think we have to accept the fact that you can't turn back the clock. The markets have evolved, they've changed, and it's a new market that you're really looking at. And tomorrow it's going to be even different. From an investment point of view, particularly in terms of the trading applications of sorts or whatever that is, there's a humongous amount of money thrown in there in terms of trying to keep up and being very different to one another. However, that is not the case with regards to the surveillance space. I mean, FSA just brought up saying the fact that not enough funds in terms of being able to really, cope up or manage such large volumes of data. So I think going forward, all of the industries or all of the participants of this marketplace has to realize that you need to invest in terms of in terms of the surveillance side as well. The fact that you need to be able to kind of protect your level of confidence that the market has on each market participant. I think these were brought up earlier on as well. So investing in terms of technology, in terms of being able to really try and get out some information out of the mass amount of data is vital. And if not invested now, I mean, it is going to get even worse tomorrow.
One of the issues touched on by the last panel was the huge amount of data that we see coming from algo trading, and indeed the increasing complexity of algo trading. And I was wondering whether that makes it a bit more difficult to ensure market integrity. Juan Pablo, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, first of all, to set the scene, it's important to address what the previous panel had already referred to, which is the IOSCO work as well as the ESMA work in terms of highly automated trading. There are references there to the requirements that the firms, investment firms as well as trading venues need to have for monitoring and surveillance. What I would say about that is that the requirements have always been there. They are not any different. However, they are now addressing the issues that are with us, perhaps, or have become more fashionable in the last 10 years. In terms of the difficulty in addressing the algorithmic trading and what that does to surveillance, I think that ESMA has correctly pointed out that it's the speed at which trading takes place that makes the monitoring and surveillance more difficult. Having said that, I don't think that the way in which it's necessarily been addressed, which is to provide, although high level at this stage, still nonetheless prescriptive, is necessarily the best approach. And I think that sort of leads on to what Wolfgang was saying earlier in the previous panel, that no matter how much regulation you have, you will still have instances where obviously the regulators need to step in and decide whether there has been a market abuse or not. I think that sort of neatly summarizes the situation.
Andy?
Well, I think surveillance is most effective when it's focused on behaviours rather than in a more rigid rules-based scenario. And when you look at the high frequency and the algo trading that's out there, I think, yes, there is difficulty because of the volume of data. So that causes problems in terms of being able to gather the data, being able to sort, filter the data, present it in a way that gives you the context of a situation. But ultimately, the behaviour is still the behaviour. It's just happening more quickly and more frequently. So in a lot of ways, the challenge is the same as it ever was in the surveillance field. And I think it's very easy to lose sort of that grounding, if you like. And it's very easy to think that algos are doing something completely different. They're trading in a different way. They're not. They're just trading more quickly. They're able to react more quickly. So really, you've got to stick yourself back to the fundamentals. You've got to look at patterns of behaviour, which potentially indicate something that could be abusive or disruptive to the market. So from that perspective, it's not more complex.
What I want is actionable intelligence, and your machine, whether it's a giant aerial array in Cyprus for listening to Soviet tank commanders exercising in Kazakhstan, or whether it's a fabulous Millennium IT bucket, data server farm with buckets of data in it, doesn't matter. It's aiming that technology at the purpose. And of course, market participants are better than that because they have a pretty fundamental purpose, and they've built algo farms that essentially evolve algos. The algo learns, did that work? No, didn't make any money, right, bin that, tear off that bit of code, staple on a bit more, see how that works, endlessly testing it. So by definition, because they're commercially focused, they're going to be a step ahead of the people who are running around doing it on the taxpayer's dollar.
Any information on algorithmic trading strategies to be available to the regulator on demand, and on a full and frank, open basis, as is required under the FSA principles in any event. But I think that's a separate story. I don't think we're going in that direction, unfortunately, however.
And it seems to me sticking with the human responsibility thing, you can lock up an algorithm and it probably doesn't mind. Locking up human beings, they kind of mind about that. So having a chain of responsibility to the regulator through human beings is probably quite, it's a plan, isn't it?
One problem.
Sorry.
Yes, just to follow up on your point, John, I think is very interesting because, of the locking up. So, also the question about having access to algorithms on an approval basis without actually, for the regulator, having any particular reason to receive that level of information, particularly in English common law jurisdictions, I don't know the answer. I'm putting that out there to the audience, whether there would be any question of actual or constructive knowledge and what that would do to any potential case that might be desirable to be brought against the designer of the algorithm or the person who uses the algorithm, whatever that may be.
The real value to monitoring and surveillance, I don't think is actually catching the wrongdoing. I think it's the preventative measure. It's having the business and therefore the clients know that you're looking. If you've got intelligent systems which then give you good information, good patterns of activity that you can go and have an intelligent conversation with a salesperson or a trader about, it makes them think. It's giving them that pause for thought, and that's where the real value to monitoring comes, to my mind. It's making that person think, hang on, I better not do this because I'm going to have compliance asking me a question.
Well, that comes back to what you were saying some time ago, John, that the more policemen on the beat.
Yeah, but also private security guards. And I think this goes to the wider question about how the financial services industry is seen in society, because essentially what you're saying is that corporates have to be compelled to be good citizens. They would not otherwise be a good citizen except under regulatory compulsion. And I see JP shaking his head.
I absolutely I think we both agree on this point. Hence why you were making it, John. I think that the point about compliance is beyond simply satisfying regulatory requirements. It's actually about reputation. That's what's going to bring a business down. In that sense, I think that compliance can be solved very easily as not something that is, by any stretch of the imagination, a necessary evil, but at the same time, you can't call it a competitive differentiator. What you can call it is a sort of bastion of ensuring that the business continues to grow and progress.
I wouldn't say with confidence that I know all of the communication systems which the business guys in our firm are using. I've got no confidence that we know all of those, and therefore I've got no confidence that we're catching all the communications channels. There are things built into trading tools that you just don't expect to be there. Then they've got access to things like blogs, and they've got access to the Facebook style sites and so on. And you've got to think of these as places where information can actually be shared. You may not think of it immediately as a medium that somebody would be doing business or passing information over, but actually it can be, and it's a huge challenge. I mean, the technology to do it in the first place is difficult, but then getting the data, it's a massive population.
Sure. Well, I completely take Andy's point. I suppose the question there is that you put in place a group of systems and controls which include prohibitions such as you shall not discuss firm business on Facebook. Failure to abide by those rules may mean that you will be dismissed, sent to the regulator, etc., and you just have to hope that type of high-level deterrent works. In the absence of it working, it can go undetected, but from a broad general perspective, I think Andy, you would agree that the systems are there to make sure that if they do get caught,
For sure, yeah.
something will happen.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've got an awful lot of channels plugged in. There's a lot of good work going on. We do find a lot of things out of it. In some respects, the communications actually are more interesting than other forms of monitoring, because they don't lead to suspicion. You actually find evidence of somebody saying they're doing something. So it's more sort of proof. So I think we've got a large part of it covered. But it's a very fast-changing area. Communications, generally, not just within the firm. I mean, if you think of the sort of the population of all these public media sites, well, they're all coming through the firm. So as they all develop and explode out onto the market, then we've got to watch that as a firm.
I mean, just to follow up on this, one thing that I do find the FSA has done and has gotten right is and ahead of the curve, is this whole business of having mobile phone recordings requirements. It's been hugely helpful. It's brought an additional layer of discipline into the trading floor that before, and I think this is reflected in some of what Andy was saying, we would have had some difficulty convincing people that there was a need to have that layer built in on top.
But there's always going to be another one. So do you guys employ younger people who will probably know the latest gizmo or whatever? Because, you guys may not necessarily be in touch with what's really going on at the cutting edge.
Unfortunately, that's absolutely right. And what I like to do when I'm sort of picking people to join the team is actually start with people who are not necessarily experienced compliance officers. Now, there are some within the team, so you end up with a mixture. But I like to bring people in who are fresher to it, younger, because they have that perspective. It's good to get that sort of different perspective, different set of skills into the team, and that then sort of percolates up through the rest of us. But yeah, I'm not particularly good at Facebook or blogging or anything like that. I don't really understand it so well, yeah.